NT1100 is one of those bikes where Honda do what they want to do, and they don't just follow the rest of the market and produce a direct competitor like everybody else has. They built a tourer that was not the same price, that's not the same configuration, and kind of went out on a little bit of a limb, but it's worked for them. The old generation of NT1100, has been the biggest selling tourer in Europe since its introduction, but it wasn't perfect. So for 2025, there's a new version, which we're going to be riding in Spain in the next couple of days. Those changes are, on the face of it, fairly minor, but all of them are targeting those issues that owners and kind of we in the press reported on at the time. Now, one of the biggest ones is electronic suspension. The old one is fairly unadjustable. You can only touch the preload, and it can be a bit mushy if you're loaded up and kind of having a bit of fun on a mountain pass somewhere. And then there's a DCT, which has been getting better and better since introduction about 10 years or so ago. But the next generation has got a few more little tweaks. It's fed by an inertial measurement unit, which tells the bike about lean angle, pitch, and yaw as well. And there's also a new sensor internally as well. Then the engine has had a little upgrade. It's had a boost in torque. That's always welcome. The IMU also feeds more sophisticated rider aids, so it should be less intrusive in terms of ABS and traction control. And then there's some little tweaks on the practicality front. Now, the screen is a massive bugbear. It makes Neevesy swear if we start talking about it, and I'm going to demonstrate it now. And I'm not messing around. This is not a bitch that I'm doing, but it really is. It's difficult. Way too much force, you can't adjust it on the move, and it's a little bit noisy as well, so the new one has a slightly different shaped screen, which should help with that. Then there's the panniers, which are standard fit too, but the previous model, they're a little bit too narrow. You can't fit a full face helmet in them, and if you're going away with your partner on the back, there's just not enough space in there, so they've increased in size too, so that's all welcome. So I've been riding this one around in the UK, absolutely freezing my something off, and reacquainting myself with what's good and what's bad. And now I'm heading out to Spain, hopefully where it's warmer, to ride the new one and see if they've improved it. So we've done a 120 mile stay on the new NT1100. And we've had a chance to examine all those points that I addressed at the start of the video, the sort of main changes to this bike. So I'm going to pick them off one by one. I'm going to start with the suspension, because I think that's going to be one thing that owners are really looking to see from this new bike. The short version is it does offer a significant improvement in terms of handling. It's not perfect, so there's a soft setting, a medium setting, and a hard setting for damping. The hard setting is too hard. Maybe that'll be a little bit different if you're too up with luggage and you need that extra support, but solo riding with nothing in the panniers as we had today, medium was more than enough most of the time. One thing I did change was the preload setting. There's, again, 3 presets for those, but if you use the user riding mode, you can delve into those and you can mess around with that a little bit as well. And I found that changing the single rider preload setting to slightly more, but not as much as the rider and pinion setting, was perfect for me. What it lacks in comparison to some other systems, particularly the Öhlins and B&W's dynamic damping system, is a little bit of subtleness and that magic carpet ride quality. So although you do have different settings at the touch of the button, they're not super refined. So it's better than before, but there is room for improvement with the next version. And then moving on to the engine, that extra torque, that was immediately obvious from the get-go. It makes a real difference to sort of the initial touch of the throttle, and if you're ready for an overtake, there's just that bit more punch there, and also a little bit more spirit as well. Part of the changes, part of the extra power comes from changes to the airbox. There's a new intake, trumpet, and the sort of velocity stacks are changed in size as well. And it has a little bit more of a sort of intake roar and a bit of a honk to it, and it just gives it a bit more life as well, which, let's be fair, for a bike like this, it can be a little bit functional and kind of uninteresting sometimes, but that just gives it a bit more life, which is nice to see. And then there's another little change actually as well that I didn't address before. The panniers, they're bigger. They now fit a helmet. That's going to please owners too. They're only an inch wider, so it shouldn't affect your filtering ability too much. And the big one, and the one that Neevesy was looking for, is the screen. Now, hopefully the clips I took will show me being able to use it on the move, and you now can. There's 5 positions. The only thing I found was the lowest position, so position number 1, you can't quite get back out of that. If you've moved it around and decide, actually, I'm going faster, or there's too much noise, or whatever it might be, it's kind of stuck there because it's so far away, even with kind of Mr. Tickle arms like I've got. But it's so much better than the old system where you had to get off the bike and near enough wrench the screen off the damn thing to get it moving. So that's a big tick for this one. And then the final one is the changes to the DCT. So DCT has been a little bit controversial in the UK since its kind of first launch, and it was really crude then, and we kind of turned our nose up at it. But with every revision that it gets better, and this one is better still, and to the point where, particularly for a bike like this, I really don't see why you'd go for the manual option unless you really can't afford that little bit extra for the DCT option. It's so much smoother now, it's kind of almost seamless, and often the only way you can tell it's changing gear, because at low speed you can just hear the click of the gearbox. And if you're on the pipe, you can just sort of hear the revs change very slightly. But other than that, there's no sort of real sensation of a sort of off and on or a clunking and changes in the drive characteristics. It's super smooth. It doesn't interfere with low speed manoeuvring, which some do, including Honda's own e-clutch actually. And for a high speed touring bike, it just makes absolute sense. It makes things relaxed and smooth. When you take a pillion, it's going to be again smoother, and you're not going to be bashing helmets, and they're going to have a nice time, and you'll be able to ride longer as well, because you're not going to be tired and just kind of those little bits of fatigue that creep in from to worry about all these things on unknown roads and doing big miles. And talking of price actually, so I've got my notepad with everything on. The DCT and electronic suspension model will be coming to the UK in December 2024, so just before the new year, at 14,099. And then there's also a DCT only model with manual suspension. That's a little bit less, but only a little bit, 13,679. To be honest, I'd pay the extra and have the electronic suspension. That's probably the sort of most significant change to this model. And then there is a standard suspension manual transmission bike at 12,679. Now, like I said before, the electronic suspension really for me is a must-have. It makes this bike, it makes it so much more versatile. And actually the DCT does as well. And I'm sure there's people going, oh, well, no, this is not the feeling of a bike unless you're pulling a lever and all this. But I don't think for a bike like this, where you're going to be doing long distances or maybe using it every day to sort of do a medium distance commute, that kind of slightly more relaxed, easy operation has a lot of bonuses. And in all honesty, if you are that bothered about changing it, you can just stick it in manual mode. And the up and down paddles, they're really responsive, and it doesn't really impact the ride as it once did. So that'd be my suggestion, is go for the all singing, all dancing model, because it's still pretty good value. In terms of rivals, there's not really much you can directly compare it with, because Honda built this as a tourer, and for that money, there's not really anything else you can compare it with directly. BMW's R12 RT is the most obvious rival in overall kind of design brief, but it's also £17,000, so realistically they're not direct competitors. And then for the same sort of money, you do have bikes like Suzuki's GSX-S 1000 GT and GX, whether you like your sports tourers kind of low or high, and Kawasaki's Versys 1100 and the new Ninja 1100 as well. But they're that bit more aggressive and a bit more sporty. They're a definite sports tourer, whereas this is light tourer, and actually perhaps with the changes, with that bit of extra pep and the option of stiffer suspension, which you never had before, this is almost the kind of the very soft end of a sports tourer. You can have fun with it. It's not just a dull, dreary bike for plodding around day to day and sort of touring slowly. If you get to a nice alpine pass and throw it around, it's going to put a smile on your face. So there's a lot of value here, and that's really what this bike is about, according to Honda. It's about making things convenient and easy, and also with kind of a sense of enjoyment as well, but also making it affordable. And Honda NT1100 is really ticking all the boxes for next year.